Okay, Ivan.
Good morning, everyone, and I'm Councillor Ivan Jewell, for those of you that don't know me, and I am Chair of the Corporate Parenting Panel. Welcome to the remote meeting of the Corporate Parenting Panel taking place on the 23rd of October 2020, which has been recorded to the Council's website and is being live streamed. I need to inform you that it will be available for at least 6 months. I would like to extend a warm welcome to members, officers, and any members of the public or media who are watching the live feed of this meeting. Before I commence with the normal business on the agenda, I would like to cover some housekeeping issues for us all to follow. Could all participants please mute their microphone, blur their background if possible. To speak, you use the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. Type RTS, request to speak. Remember that everyone in the meeting can see the message in the chat function. When invited to speak by the chair, remember to unmute your microphone. Once invited to speak, please introduce yourself with your name and position, unless you have already introduced yourself earlier in the meeting. If you are having issues with connectivity, try switching off your video and use just the audio function. If connectivity issues continue, you may have to leave the meeting and rejoin to get a better signal. If I lose connection, the Vice Chair, Councillor Heather Smith, will assume control of the meeting until my connection is restored. Thank you very much and welcome. Can we move straight into the business of today, please? And could I ask, are there any apologies for absence? Michael.
Morning, Chair. It's Michael Turnbull, Democratic Services. We have apologies today from Councillor George Richardson.
Thank you very much. And can I ask, are there any substitute members?
Chair, we have no substitute members today.
That's fine. So can we move to the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of February 2020? It seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? I think I'd like to mention at this time, as you're probably aware, that there have been lots of updates going around, so it hasn't been a break from February to the present date. And can I thank Helen for and the other officers for the comprehensive information and updates provided throughout this period of time. I'm assuming that you've all read the minutes of the meeting in February. Can we agree the meeting, the record as a true record?
Agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Thanks very much. Can I ask, are there any declaration of interest? No declarations of interest. So can we move on to the number of looked after children? And I believe that Helen will be coming in on that one. Thank you, Helen.
Morning, everybody. It's Helen Ferguson, Head of Children's Social Care at the Council. In terms of an update in relation to the numbers of looked after children that we currently are caring for, the figure as of this morning was 955 children. You'll note that that's been an increase since the last time we met back in February time of somewhere in the region of about 50 children. That follows the regional and national trend and is largely as a result of some of the changes in the way that all of our different systems have been operating throughout the COVID period, which has inevitably kind of slowed down some of the plans for children. So it's not necessarily that we've had more new children coming into the system, but it is about now continuing our work to make sure that where we've got plans for children to leave the system, we're able to progress those through the courts and such like.
Thank you, Helen. And can I ask if anyone has any questions or comments on the update? It doesn't look as though that is the case. So can I move on to the next item on the agenda and say thank you to Helen? The next item is item 6, investing in children in care council update from the project officer investing in children. Can I call upon Rob to give an update, please?
Good morning, everybody. My name's Rob Johnson from Investing in Children, and I work alongside Durham County Council and children and young people to raise important messages from them and to support the services and the work what goes on with children and young people. Over the summer, young people continue to connect with the corporate parenting panel virtually, and very recently at the August meeting, one of the young people spoke about a national campaign which is facilitated by Calmer Voices. They're a national charity. They do a lot of work to campaign for better rights, better services for children and young people in care and leaving care. This virtual campaign was very much about challenge stigma, negativity, stereotypes that some people hold in regards to children in care and leaving care and care leavers. And I'm sure we've all come up against challenges and debated that with people regarding that. Well, the Children in Care Council members, both Amber and Ian and lots more, appreciate this campaign, but really wanted to look at it at a local level, so it would better support the positive stories which children and young people do and within their lives. So one of the stories I just want to bring to your attention, which has been developed by the young people who pulled the presentation together but couldn't make it today, was about a story from a young woman in regards to dedication pays the way. And her story is very much about working hard, 6 days a week, going to college. You know, she wants to achieve. She's doing a great deal of hard work to progress in her life. And as a result of that, I think it demonstrates the importance of what positivity can bring to children and young people's lives. And as a result of that, the young people think it's really important that we kind of consider this in County Durham, and we look to continue and progress and promote better the positivity of what children and young people are doing within their communities who are in care and leaving care. And I think the Children in Care Council do have a few ideas to one corporate parenting panel to consider today. And that's kind of very much a link to the role the Children in Care Council take and invest in children and how we work together. And their thoughts are, you know, working with the corporate parenting panel, social workers and others to circulate these positive stories. The Children in Care Council would consider ideas and how to do this, and where we think the corporate parenting panel can come in is review positive stories by Durham County Council, like Katie's, who spoke about her work 6 days a week and going to college, and opportunities to circulate these and promote that a lot better than what we've kind of previously been doing, and to support that campaign locally. And I think another thing, since I've picked up the Children in Care Council, and I think this is really important, is the Children in Care Council magazine. We now onto our third, and we've had 14 young people contribute to that. The latest one is very much about their thinking and thoughts on support they've had, and there's some really excellent stories there, including kind of things they've done over the summer. And I think what the Children in Care Council particularly want corporate parenting panel members to do is read the newsletter and circulate it to promote that positive message regarding children and young people in care and leaving care. And in regard to the benefits in relation to the presentation young people put together, I mean, foster and recruitment teams could be looking at this, could be thinking about campaigns and approaches to promote it positively in the stories. And I think my kind of final point, because I do want to keep this specific and on time, is that the young people and the Children in Care Council think this could boost confidence for children and young people, and seeing what other children and young people are doing who are care experienced in regards to the kind of positive contributions they are making within their lives and to their communities.
Thank you very much, Rob, for that. Can I ask if anyone has any questions or comments on Rob's presentation, please? There doesn't seem to be any questions there, but unfortunately, Councillor Reid put a request to speak earlier, I think in response to Helen Ferguson's report. Can we pull you in with that question now, please, Anne?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. My name is Councillor Anne Reid. I'm the County Councillor from the Crook Division. Thanks, Helen, for the information that you gave. You did say 955 children in care. That was the update. I just wondered whether we have enough foster carers in order to look after these children, because I know it's quite a high figure, 955. So could you give me an update on that at the moment, please?
Yes, so as you'll be aware, the foster care recruitment campaign is still a really significant priority for us, and there's lots of activity going on at the moment in terms of just continuing to ensure that we maintain a steady stream of foster carers to look after our children. One of the things that we have noticed in over recent months is that we have quite a number of children who are living in what we call kinship care arrangements, so family and friends arrangements. And whilst those people are still assessed and approved as foster carers, they are approved as foster carers for the particular child that they're looking after that tends to be within their extended family. And obviously that's a really good thing for children because it means that they can remain within their families or with people that they already have a relationship with. And it also means that some of the pressures that you're kind of describing in relation to the overall system and whether we've got enough carers for our children, that really helps with that. So it is, as you know, and again, it's a national picture that we absolutely need to continue to make sure that we have sufficient placements for children, whether that's foster care or residential care. So that work continues, but it is really, really positive that we're also seeing a really significant proportion of our children being able to remain within their extended family kinship care arrangements as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Helen, and I agree with you. I do think some of the children, they find it a little difficult when we first go into foster care. They don't know what to expect. So I do think that's a good move that you are looking for families to place those children into until a time when they can maybe move back, you know. But thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Anne, and I'll answer it, Helen. I now have Councillor Milburn. Councillor, will you introduce yourself, please, and also address who you're asking the question to, please?
Oh, thanks, Chair. Councillor Olga Milburn, Tanfield Division, and I'd like to ask a question of Rob. Is it Rob, the last speaker? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't hear. Yeah, I'd like to know whether the Children in Care Council have a direct link to our DCC comms. Are they able to actually feed pieces of information into them, little clips like the one about the girl who's doing the jobs? And because we can look at it from our point of view and big up the children from this end, but if it's not being fed through, if it's at a purely local level and it's not getting out there, then you know, it's not going to do much good, is it? I would like to think they are. Thanks.
Rob, can you answer that question, please? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, yeah, we are, in a nutshell. That the newsletters are getting circulated through comms to, you know, foster carers, not just within the care community and the services, but beyond that as well. So we have the connections and we're doing that. I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware, we've had one young person who's been writing poetry, and we've had the Children's Commissioner for England retweeting that. And you know, that poem's going out to like thousands and thousands of people. We use our profiles as well to push positive stories out there. We've done that over the summer through a really effective distribution of summer packs and boxes to lots of children and young people. So we are, but I think it's really important that yourselves do that to your communities and the people you know and the connections you have.
Thanks very much for that, Rob.
Thank you.
Okay, can I now move on to Councillor Constantine, please?
Thanks, Chair. Mine was just to Rob as well, because that magazine sounds brilliant. I'll be happy to share it wherever I can. I don't think we've been sent it as yet, unless I've missed it. So if we could get that, we can. But I also wondered if there was any way we could link it into the County Durham News, because that goes to every house in County Durham, so we can't have a wider reach than that. Whether it's inserting a copy if it's printed, or putting a page in, or whatever, I don't know what the best thing would be, but whether there was any options to look into that. The other thing I just wanted to mention was, to Helen's point, it was really pleasing to hear that there wasn't this massive deluge of children in the system. I think we're all worried about schools being one of the biggest referrers and being potentially closed for that length of time. So while it has gone up considerably, to hear the reasons for it make a lot of sense, and that was really good to hear. So thank you for that.
Thanks very much, Councillor Constantine. Can I now invite Councillor Tucker, please?
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. Rob, Helen, I'm not actually sure who will answer this question, but I've got two, if you don't mind. I'm just wondering what support our young people are receiving to ensure that their mental well-being is looked after. This has been hard for everybody, but I would think particularly hard for some of our looked after children. So that was, what we're doing to ensure that they're staying well, feeling positive, etc. And the second part of my question is, it's really great to see Katie enjoying her job and, sort of going to college, and that's really positive. I'm just wondering how our young people go about. Do we help them find jobs? Do we source them, or do they do it themselves? What support are we giving to our young people to actually find employment? And are we vetting the employment? Just to ensure that there's nothing in the background from a previous incarnation that might hinder our young people from progressing. Thank you.
Okay, Helen, would you like to answer that one, please?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Tucker. In relation to emotional well-being of children, you're right that it has been a really challenging time for some of our young people. Having said that, we've also found that for some young people, particularly at the start of lockdown, where children weren't going to school and were able to remain at home with foster carers, and also within our children's homes, for some of our children that was a really, really positive experience as well. So I think it's been a very mixed experience. So some young people have done really well by being able to spend lots of time with their foster carers, and the foster carers have done some absolutely tremendous work with our children and young people to support them through lockdown. For lots of children, going back to school in September has been a really positive move, but for some other children it's been quite a challenge to get back into routine and back to school again. So I think, as is often the way, and there's something about understanding the needs of every individual child and how they've experienced these very strange times that we're currently living through, and making sure that support is really tailored to their particular needs. We've extended the support that Full Circle are able to offer, so we continue to have therapeutic support that's available. None of the mental health services have stopped delivering support to our children, even through the height of lockdown. So our CAM services and such like locally have continued to provide that support where it's been necessary. And we have looked at things like peer support so that children can support each other. It's also interesting that, some children have really thrived through the online and digital kind of platforms that, we've all had to get used to. So for lots of our children and young people, that's very normal to them. And actually, they've really liked the opportunity to talk to people and work with them online. That's very, that's been a very helpful thing. So again, it's just another example of how we've really had to kind of look at every child individually and work out what's the right thing for them in terms of their mental health. Your question around employment and supporting young people with employment, there's a very comprehensive programme of work with very dedicated senior officers that manage all of the work that we do with our children and young people, both to prepare them for leaving school and work, as well as then moving into college and such like. And we'll definitely have a very detailed update about the nature of that work and how successful it is throughout the course of the year. We have had lots of young people that have headed off to university this year. So I think at the moment we've got 30, in the region of 30 of our older young people who are now accessing higher education opportunities. But having said that, we also know that we're living in a really challenging time in relation to employment more generally, and so the absolute focus on our young people will be an absolute top priority for us.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
You.
Thank you. Can I pull Rob, please? You want to speak? Could you come in and speak, Rob, please?
Yeah, I just kind of want to reinforce Helen's points, really. I do things called the Invest in Children Award, which is given to organisations and services who can demonstrate dialogue and change. And I've just spent the last few months talking to different young people who access the Young People Service, looking at the pre-lockdown, middle of lockdown and the back end of it. And the young people advisors, particularly the young people, particularly who've left care, the value they've placed on them over the last few months is massive. And once that report's finalised and agreed by the children and young people, I would suggest you do read it. You know, I've wrote it based on what your children and young people have told me, particularly care leavers, and it's really valuable, the role they've played over the last few months.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. I think that I've been a little remiss. What we need to do is we need to note the last two reports. Can we do that, please? Thanks very much for that, and thank you for persevering with me. Can we now move on to item number 7? That's the corporate parenting panel annual report. And can I hand you over to Jane for this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Jane Watson, Senior Partnerships Officer in Durham County Council. So the Corporate Parenting Panel Annual Report, the terms of reference for the Corporate Parenting Panel form part of Durham County Council's constitution. And in there, it makes specific reference that we need to produce an annual report to be shared with Council, Cabinet and Scrutiny. So this is the 3rd annual report that we've done as a panel, covering April 19 to March 2020, which again seems like a lifetime ago. Young people from the Children in Care Council helped to develop the annual report to ensure that the voice of the child is reflected in our work. We were lucky enough to have a meeting on the 2nd of March where 25 young people attended to share their thoughts on the annual report. But since then, unfortunately, the engagement and consultation with young people has had to be done by email through Investing in Children. So although they have been involved in the development, it hasn't been as detailed as we would have liked. So if we're still working with these restrictions for the next annual report, we will be looking to work more closely with the young people and get some virtual meetings in place so that we can get them more involved. As well as an introduction this time from the new Chair, Councillor Jewell, we have included messages from the co-opted young people. So Amber and Ian both have sections in the annual report this time. The annual report was due to be agreed by members of the Corporate Parenting Panel back in July, but because meetings were cancelled, the Chair and Vice Chair agreed it, and then it went out by email for that wider agreement, and it was endorsed by Cabinet on the 14th of October. And then just given that it didn't come to the meeting, we thought it would be useful to just pull out some of the achievements from 2019-20 and then just remind people what our priorities were that we agreed with the young people for 2020-2021. So if we just move on there, slide 2 in your packs. The Corporate Parenting Panel was shortlisted for the Local Government Chronicle Awards in 2020 in the Children's Services category. And Helen, Councillor Smith and Amber went to London in January to do a presentation to the judges, just outlining why they felt that we should win. The awards ceremony was due to take place in March, but because of the restrictions, we won't find out now how we've done until the 28th of October, so next week, and that'll be a virtual event. But just being in the finals is a great achievement because there were so many people entered into that category, so I think we should certainly celebrate that we've made it this far. An invitation's gone out to all members of the corporate parent panel to participate in that virtual event. I did send a link round, but if anybody wants to go, you do need to register on that link, and then you need to test out the email that you get back just before the event. So I'll send a reminder later today, but just if you do want to take part, you'll need to trial that in advance. Young people considered the language that we use across Durham County Council as professionals and provided feedback on this. There's a lot more work to take place, but today changes have been made to us using family and brother and sister instead of siblings, and using family time instead of the term contact. So that is sort of been incorporated into all our reports, and it's been used as general practice across the council now. Young people have developed a range of training, and they've done training to about 50 potential foster carers, so that they can help them to make informed decisions before they sign up to be foster carers, and feedback is that that is really valuable. Over 100 students on social work courses across the North East in our universities at Sunderland, Durham and New College Durham have received training to make sure that they understand from the outset what young people do want from a social worker, so that they're informed at the beginning of that journey. As Rob just mentioned, 44 of our teams across the council have achieved their Investing in Children membership awards, which they only get when we can evidence that we've made changes on the back of dialogue with young people. So that's really positive. There's been changes to our children's homes, including information being put on display about who the Reg 44 visitors are, and also who elected members are, because young people said that they weren't aware of who their local councillors were if they needed to contact them. So those details are now on the Investing in Children website and on our website and on display in the homes. The independent reviewing officers have now created profiles which go out to the young people in advance of any meetings so that they know who's attending. A range of financial support is on offer to our young people, including council tax exemptions, winter fuel allowance payments made on a discretionary basis to our care leavers to help tackle fuel poverty. Approximately 600 freedom cards have been issued to young people and their families across the county, which gives them access to swimming, leisure centres, cinemas and other activities. And then the Drive project supports young people with driving lessons. So the project will pay for one lesson, and then young people need to pay for their next lesson, and so on. So it's one of each. 21 young people to date have actually passed their practical driving tests using that project. So that's really good. You might remember, it seems again a lifetime ago, but members donated money from their own budgets to support our care leavers to go out for a Christmas lunch back in 2019. And enough money was secured to repeat this again in 2020. But given the pandemic restrictions, we just need to work out what we can do with that, whether it goes into vouchers or hampers, or whether we put it back to 2021 and have a big celebratory meal when we're allowed out. What else have we got? Celebrations. So we continue to celebrate success and achievements throughout the year. The 2020 Care Day was planned by young people from the Children and Care Council, and 82 people from across the care community attended that. And like Rob mentioned before, that was looking at mental health stigma. Young people from the Children and Care Council and the fostering services supported a winter wonderland experience, and over 170 attendees came to that, and that included a silent disco, which I've never been to one of those, and a Santa's grotto. The Exceptional People in Care Awards, so EPIC Awards, was a festival themed event, and we do have pictures from that on the cover of the annual report, where young people between 15 and 25 come together and celebrate their achievements, and the winners of the categories do get a £50 voucher. A movie premiere was hosted down in Durham Town Hall to showcase the Digital Voice project, which was a range of video profiles pulled together by Children in Care, and these use data, media and animation, so that enabled the young people to speak honestly and openly about themselves and about their experience of our social workers while remaining anonymous, and that's been used in lots of training across the council. If we just go on to slide 3, so the priorities that we agreed with young people for next year. So young people continue to tell us that affordable transport is an issue across the county. So discussions are taking place to look at how subsidised transport can be offered to our young people. But, you know, young people and workers, we all acknowledge that it's really difficult given the geographies across County Durham and the range of providers that deliver those services in each area. So that's ongoing. Young people, they've mentioned it at meetings, but again, a reminder that we've been asked to look at how we can explore expanding the freedom cards or discount schemes for young people. We've already managed to extend that so that young people can join the welfare scheme, the Durham County Council welfare scheme, and we'll be looking to have discussions with the young people about discounts we can get them in shops and services that they use. They were very clear that this was things that they use and not us just going off and seeking discounts for major shops like Marks and Spencer's, where they've been very clear that they wouldn't shop there. So that work needs to take place with the young people. The Children in Care Council will be delivering teacher training across the county to teachers and designated teachers in school to help them better understand the needs of looked after children. And the next one was the care experienced young inspectors. So young people will be trained in these roles, and they will go into our residential homes and they will share their views and observations on the home and the services that we provide to young people to help us understand what young people in care actually want from us and for us to understand better how we're doing on that. So they're our priorities for 2021, but some of those may need to shift a little bit given the impact of COVID. But that's a whistle stop tour and reminder of what we've done and what we've still got to do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jane, for that comprehensive report. You were lucky when I had to give the report at Cabinet last week. I was only allowed a maximum of 5 minutes, and it was quite a comprehensive report that you've just given us, and we really appreciate that. I also would like to thank everyone that was involved in the production of it. I think that you can't help but be impressed at the design and the layout of the report, as well as the content. And I'd like to give my thanks and the thanks of the panel for all of the hard work that went into that. Can I ask if anyone has any would like to speak, ask any questions? Okay, that seems to have been really comprehensive, and I'm sure people have enjoyed reading it as well as listening to your presentation. What we have to do now is, let's say, we have to receive and note this report. Do I have your permission for that, everyone? Thanks very much. Thank you. Right, the next item on the agenda is item 8, and it is the corporate parenting strategy. And I'd like to invite Head of Children's Social Care to present the report. Thanks very much, Helen.
Thanks, Chair. You'll all be very familiar with the corporate parenting strategy. We have a strategy that we update and renew on an annual basis. And we were just very conscious that because of the lack of meetings since March, that we hadn't had an opportunity to update you about some of our priorities for this year. So what I plan to do today really is just to talk to you about some of the key pieces of work that we've got planned or that are currently ongoing that form the basis of the key strategic priorities for the service over this year. As Jane said, in terms of similar to the annual report, it may well be that some of these pieces of work move into next year as well, just because of some of the limitations around the COVID restrictions that we've been working with. You've got some slides in your pack that just are reminders of some of the key areas of the strategy that we work with. And I'm not proposing to particularly go through the detail of those, but what I will do is just talk to you in slide 3. You can see the 8 priority areas there listed, and what I plan to do this morning is just to give you some examples of some of the key pieces of work that sit around each of those 8 priorities. So the first one relates to really good, effective multi-agency partnership work, and our priority focus around that for this year is to continue to embed and develop some work that we've been doing with our health partners, with a particular focus on young people who have mental health mental ill health, particularly those with very, very complex needs. So that's a piece of work that started, and we are making sure that all of the right partners are sitting around the table to ensure that there's right coordinated support for those young people. And in addition to that, we have a specific piece of work ongoing with colleagues within TUV, Tees, Esk and Wear Valley Mental Health Trust, to look at services that will support young people in crisis and prevent young people needing to go into hospital, as well as developing some services which will have a focus on those young people who have needed to be in hospital and are ready to move back into the community again. So those are key pieces of work that have already started and will be taken forward over the course of the rest of this year. The second priority, it focuses on preventing the need for young people to come into the looked after system in the first place. You're all very aware of our Supporting Solutions service, which is our edge of care provision. We made a decision at the end of last year to expand the number of workers that we've got within our Supporting Solutions service in order to be able to support more young people. We've reviewed the criteria, and we're going to be able to work with a greater number of young people and some younger children than historically we've been able to work with. So that's a key focus for this year, and we've also got a real focus on delivering family group conferences. And again, you've heard about that in the past, I know, but as we mentioned earlier on, that allows us to make sure that we absolutely focused on the support that extended family members can give to children and young people, which is really important in terms of ensuring that they can remain with their families wherever possible. And as you also are aware, we are currently embedding signs of safety as our practice model right across the service. And signs of safety has one of the central tenets of signs of safety is this idea of family networks and the importance of family networks. So a big priority for us over the course of this year is to really make sure that we are supporting all of our staff to ensure that all of our families have the offer of a family network meeting when they have difficulties within their lives, really. So that's the key priority there. The third priority relates to placement sufficiency, and we touched on that earlier in the meeting. There are a number of key pieces of work that we're taking forward to ensure that we've got sufficient placement provision for our children. I think we talked about our plans to open a new children's home in the north of the county before we went into lockdown. Many of you will remember that. As you know, there's often quite a lengthy lead-in time for those pieces of work, but that new children's home will open within the next few weeks. It's for 3 young people. We've already identified 2 young people who will move straight in there, and then once they're settled, we'll identify the 3rd young person who'll go and live alongside them. You're also aware that we have plans to replace one of our older children's homes down in the south of the county. And those plans are progressing, and again that new children's home will open over the next few months. We would hope that it'll be open for the new year, and the children will simply move home, so the children that are in the existing property will move into that new property once it's open. We have got plans over the course of this year to think about continuing to develop our edge of care services, and whether we develop some more residential provisions so that we can provide some short breaks and respite for our young people who are on the edge of care, and I'll update you about that as the plans progress. And we have been doing some work with some providers to make sure that we've got some smaller homes. We've got some young people with very complex needs who either prefer to live on their own, or because of the extent of their complex needs, their needs can be better met if they either live on their own or possibly with one other young person. So we are looking at a whole range of ways in which we can develop some specialist provision for those young people. And as I already mentioned earlier in the meeting, a really big and continued focus on ensuring that we recruit sufficient foster carers to care for our children. So they're the priorities around sufficiency. The 4th priority relates to promoting early permanence. So where we've got small children, young children, and we want, if they're not able to safely remain at home with their families, that we ensure that there isn't any delay for those children, and we move them into alternative care arrangements as quickly as possible. So in the priority pieces of work around that are, many of you will know about our pre-birth service. and we've had updates into this meeting previously. We're just in the process of reviewing the criteria for our pre-birth service, and what we would like to do is extend the criteria to ensure that our care leavers are supported through that service if they become parents. So we think that that will be a really important development for us as corporate parents, for our young people, and that they get the very best possible service and support for them as parents. We also are really lucky to be able to go live next month with a new project called the Pause Project. You've heard about it previously, I think, but we'll remember that it was on a very small scale within County Durham, and we were delivering that with other regional partners. We're lucky enough now to be able to go live with a dedicated County Durham project, Pause Project, who will be able, and they'll be able to work with in the region of between 20 and 25 parents at any one time, and again that's about supporting those parents where they haven't been able to keep their babies with them, and helping them to kind of break that cycle. So that feels like a really important development, and they'll be working really closely with our pre-birth service so that they're very integrated. The fifth priority relates to embedding our local offer for care leavers. There's always lots of work going on in relation to strengthening our offer for care leavers. We mentioned earlier about employment opportunities, and I spoke about that, the importance of that work, particularly in the current context. We are piloting what's called a Staying Close project. So that's something where we've got young people who are living within our residential homes, and once they get to the point of either being 18 or being in a position where they want to live independently, that we're starting to look for flats and tenancies for those young people so that they can move out, but they can continue to live really close to their children's home and continue to access support from the staff that they know and who've cared for them and loved them for all those years. So our plan is to pilot that in the first instance against one of our children's homes, and then roll that out further as the year goes on. And the final big piece of work that we've got planned for our care leavers is to develop a new drop-in centre, and we're hoping to have that open and ready for use in the spring of next year. Priority 6 relates to improving the health and well-being of our children and young people, and we have made a commitment to roll out what's called a clear-cut communication tool, which is really about recognising that many of our children and young people, whilst they haven't necessarily got a diagnosed speech and language problem, they often need some additional support in terms of some of the speech and language issues to make sure that they understand some of the kind of complex and key concepts that people are talking to them about. So we're going to roll that out through the virtual school, as well as through our health assessments for our young people in the first instance, and then more broadly right across the service as the year progresses. Priority 7 relates to good education, employment and training, and I have already mentioned some of the work that's going on for our care leavers. There's lots of work going on in the virtual school. We've been able to increase the capacity of the virtual school since March, which has been really positive. And what that means is that the virtual school will now be able to have oversight of all of our children in early years settings as well as school settings. And then over the course of the next 18 months or so, they'll also be able to have oversight of our post-16 provision for our looked after children. And again, we think that's a really, really positive development. And finally, priority 8 relates to the ongoing work that we do, and you've heard a lot about that already this morning in terms of our engagement with children and young people and how we make sure that they feel involved, that they feel heard, that we're acting on the things that they're telling us about. Jane's already mentioned some of those things that are in the annual report in terms of young inspectors, for example. And the other piece of work that's emerged through lockdown actually is that some of our young people have mentioned that they've got issues with Wi-Fi within the children's homes, either the speed of the Wi-Fi or some of the issues about general access. And so we've been able to pick up on that really quickly. And we've got a programme of work planned across all of our children's homes to improve the Wi-Fi speed, etc., across our children's homes between now and the end of this financial year. So that's a key piece of work that we're taking forward on the back of the feedback we've had from children and young people.
Okay, thank you, Helen. That was very comprehensive. We're really making you work for your money this morning, aren't we? Can I ask anyone, is there any questions or comments on the strategy, please? I've got some requests already, and can I pull in Councillor Charlton, please? Councillor Joyce Charlton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Joyce Charlton from the Tanfield Division. Helen, thank you very much for that. And I don't envy the staff the huge amount of work that you've got ahead of you. But one of my questions is, can you divulge where the drop-in centre is going to be and how was that area identified?
We're just working through the detail of that, so we'll be in a position to be able to share some of the detail as soon as we've got that confirmed, and I can share that with you outside of the meeting.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Can I call in Councillor Joplin, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Joplin, Crook Division. One of the question I want to ask is to do with the care leavers. When you've had a child in care for some considerable time, and they then get to the age of 18 and they are then going out on their own, obviously they're probably looking forward to that. When they get there, it's a totally different ball game to what happens in the care while they're in care. Can you tell me the children that don't make that transition well and have to then be took back into care, do we take them back into care? Do we find alternative arrangements? Because there are, I think, probably a very small amount, I would imagine, that really can't cope with that initial sort of going out on their own and doing their own thing. And you do provide, I've looked and listened to what you've said, an awful lot of support there. But, you know, I'm sure you do get the odd few. And so sometimes I get very concerned about the odd few that, that are sort of left behind.
Chair, do you want me to come back in now?
Yes, I think if you come back in now, it'd be fine.
Yeah. So each of our young people who are 18 and have formally left care have a dedicated young person's advisor. So that's a member of staff who is their support person, if you like, who's very experienced in working with our older young people. So that's the first thing. And they can see those members of staff as often, as frequently or as infrequently as they need to and as they want to. We have a very broad range of different kinds of accommodation and support for our young people, and that's very dependent on, exactly as you've identified, the nature of the support that they need. So some young people are really keen and ready to head off to college or university or set off on their own, and some of our young people need a significantly greater amount of support. And so each of our young people has a plan that's specific to them, that really ensures that we understand exactly what they need and what the extent of the support is that they need. And our support continues until they're 25, if that's what they need. So no young person is left on their own. We do really well in Durham in knowing exactly where all of our young people are and and keeping in touch with all of our young people who are 18 plus. So we're very confident that we can develop a plan around each of them that particularly meets their needs.
Helen, I think what I was trying to get at is the young adults that just cannot cope on their own. How do we deal with, I know there's a lot of support, but they're still on their own, and some people just can't cope, can they, on their own?
So if they don't want to live on their own, or they are going to struggle to live on their own, then we would identify other kinds of services where they wouldn't need to live on their own. So we have a whole range of different items. So there's things like our supported lodging scheme, where young people can go and live with people who provide them with that kind of support. There are kind of group living arrangements. We have living arrangements where members of staff come in and provide some support throughout the day. A whole different range of options that are designed to meet the needs of young people. So if it's not right for a young person to live on their own, then we would look for some alternatives.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to both of you. Can I draw in Councillor Constantine, please?
Thanks, Chair. It was just a couple on priority 3 that I know Helen mentioned, the early permanence, and it just got us thinking whether I knew we had the fostering to adopt options for carers, and I know we're struggling to get people on that due to the uncertainty around court arrangements and everything else. I just wonder if there'd been any uplift in that, because I know you can't get much more earlier permanence than that if you can get it in place. The other thing, I was really pleased to hear about the pause programme, and lastly on staying close. I think that's great. I know how much I relied on my parents still when I was a grown up and moved out, and I just wondered why we're piloting it in one home, where we'll be able to do it on an informal level for any other young people in the homes that want to look at that.
And we're working really closely with colleagues within housing to make sure that I can identify, suitable flats and tenancies and properties that are in the right kind of geographical locations around the county. In relation to your question about foster to adopt placements, we've currently got 4 of those arrangements in place. And the only other thing I probably should have mentioned earlier is that you will all be familiar with the plans to go live with the Regional Adoption Agency next year. So that will go formally live in the spring, but again that will offer us some additional opportunities to think about how we might be able to recruit carers specifically for the foster to adopt kind of programme. So that is another opportunity that's kind of on the horizon.
Great, thank you.
Okay, can I call in Councillor Reid now, please?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I think I need to say that I'm very impressed with the work that's actually been put in place and the work that is expected in the near future. I think all of the staff need a good pat on the back for being able to do this. It's absolutely fantastic. And of course, at the centre of this is our children and our young people who are going to greatly benefit from the work that the fostering service is actually doing, and for the whole of the children's services. Ellen, I just wanted to ask you just a question about, I think it relates to priority 7 and about education, I think it is. Just one of what I'd like to ask is, sometimes we have children who, when they get into secondary school, life becomes a little bit chaotic for them and they cannot cope. And what you find is they then go missing from school. And then when they come back into school, it's still a bit, they obviously cannot cope with the situation. I just wondered what kind of provisions are in place that would sort of help the school and in a sense help the children to become more settled in that environment. Or if they can't cope with that environment, is there something else? Is there an alternative provision which they could go to continue so they can still learn, so they can still benefit from it,
Chair, I think the virtual head is on the call. Melanie Stubbs, she might want to come in and just respond to that one.
I've just put up right to speak. Hi, I'm Melanie Stubbs. I'm the virtual head for Durham. So basically, to answer your question, Councillor Reid, we have lots of things in school. As a virtual school, we've got lots of service level agreements that we have with therapeutic services, with the educational health needs team. So when things start to go wrong for one of our children, we ask schools to alert us. I mean, as you're aware, hopefully, we haven't had a permanent exclusion of a child looked after in County Durham since 2014. So that's a really positive message. So I think that tells everybody that we have got lots of things in place where we can put those interventions in quickly, swiftly. We ask schools to speak to the virtual school immediately something starts to go wrong. This academic year, I've I've become more part of the behaviour panels. We have behaviour panels across the county where they meet and they look at our children amongst all of the children in the county. And I think a heartening thing from that is that I've been to 4 meetings this year so far, and there's only been 2 of our looked after children who have actually been brought to the table to discuss, because the provision within school they were really struggling with because of their own emotional well-being. So we've looked at alternative provisions for those children so that they're not in school full time, but they're still getting a full-time education. So places like Engage at Hoffel College, East Durham College, Education Plus, World, they all offer something a little bit more than just a school environment, which we all know that a lot of our children, you know, feel a little bit claustrophobic in sometimes when things start to go wrong. So we act swiftly. We've also got a really good service level agreement with Full Circle. And the way we've extended that out across this new academic year is it's a helpline for schools. So if they've got concerns that they've got a child who's looked after, that helpline's available till 1 o'clock every day, and they can make a call, the school can make a call to the helpline to get some advice. If it's attachment and trauma related, Full Circle can then offer support to the school to look at the best ways to work with those young people. We've got service level agreements with Future Steps, which is occupational therapy, and with the speech and language team. And Helen's already mentioned the Clear Cut tool, which is a good communication tool. So as we go forward, what's going to happen in the future is that the virtual school, as a child comes into care at the initial PEP meeting, they're going to work with the child to carry out that piece of work once their training's been put in place. So there's an awful lot of things that are available for all of our young people. We've still got the inclusion base at Lanchester, which gives some schools a little bit of breathing space if the child's behaviour changes quite rapidly, and they can go there for 5 mornings a week and then back into school, or they can do 2 days there and then 3 days in school. But I think what we've not got to lose sight of is that our children looked after need to belong. And I'm very much against taking them out, then to put them back in, perhaps, you know, 12, 16, 18 weeks down the line, because then they no longer feel that they belong. So it's important that we look at each child as an individual and get the package that's best for those children at that particular time. Does that help with the answer?
It certainly does, because I mean, you know, there's a comprehensive list there of various services which the child can access to hopefully benefit that child and get them back on track again, and like you say, making them feel as though they belong somewhere.
And that's the important thing. Our children need to believe, you know, that somebody wants them and that they're loved within the environment that we place them in. And that's what we're working towards. Plus, we're doing a lot of work with Rob and the Children in Care Council, and we've commissioned some podcasts, which we're very excited about. And we found, you know, our children in care tell us exactly what they want us to do and what they don't want us to do in our approach. So we do listen to them. You know, we don't jump in with 2 feet when it's not wanted.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, and thank you.
Yes, and I thank you on behalf of the panel for that comprehensive insight that you've given on that situation. That was it's excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jewell.
Thank you. Helen, I take it you don't have anything more to say? That's great. Thanks very much. Can we move on now?
Chair,
to
there's two. Just about to say there's 2 more requests to speak in the chat.
Yeah, I've got them. Thanks a lot. Councillor Tugger.
Thank you, Chair. Helen, I'm just wondering 2 things, and maybe Melanie will be able to help with the answer. There must at times be a child that just does not want to be helped. When they get to a certain age, you know, they dig their feet in, they get stubborn. We've all got well, I'm assuming we've all got teenagers, or we know of teenagers. There does come a time when doesn't matter what you do, they just refuse. So firstly, how do we continue to support them, and what measures are in place? And secondly, is mainly about the accommodation, etc. How do you choose which neighbourhoods to put a property in to house our young people? And how do you ensure it's a suitable area for them? I know I've got a property in my division at Woodhouse at Bishop Auckland, where there's been some complaints about a particular property and the nature of the young people who are housed there. So I'm just wondering how you gel all of that and ensure that the neighbourhood is a good fit and isn't going to be counterproductive for our young people. They're my questions.
Right. Shall I start with about the children that don't want to learn yet? Basically, I think our motto has got to be, we don't give up. And I think that is so important for the young people that we work with. I mean, obviously, I had a school background and I was a designated teacher myself for probably 15 plus years within a school. And it's about the young person knowing that they've always got that one person to go to. So we would appoint a mentor within a school. We've got our children looked after PEP caseworkers who try to build up really positive relationships. But if it continues not to work, we keep looking for what will work. And in some cases, that means that we've got to engage the educational health needs team, who can perhaps try and reintegrate a child into school who is refusing to go to school. We can look at alternative provisions and get the right match. Quite often, let's say it was year 10 coming up to 11, two vital years in that young person's life, we would try and look at alternative provisions that would then lead on to post-16 provision. And I think as well, because I've introduced this year the children looked after PEP caseworker remaining with the child through, because the child changes their social worker into a young person's advisor during year 10, that for some young people, they need that little bit more consistency. So by keeping their PEP caseworker, that person really understands their academic needs and how they, you know, how they function within a school environment, within a college environment, so that they can move through with them and be their voice at that next stage. So I think it's just for a lot of our young people that we work with, it's just letting them know, I'm not going to give up. I mean, there's a young man that I had when I was in school who's now in one of our children's homes, and I've experienced his journey from year 6 because I was part of his transition into secondary, and he's at that point now in his life, but I'm not giving up on him either. And I keep talking to him in his children's home, and we're looking at the second alternative provision for him. But I'm determined to get him to the end of year 11 with something, you know. And I think that's the message that we need out there to our children who are looked after and just need that extra bit of interest. I think sometimes is what's important from the adults around them.
That's brilliant.
Is that okay?
That's more than fine, Melanie. Thank you very much.
Yes, and could I add my thanks to Melanie. Now I'm being advised that maybe Claire Morris is the best person to answer the second question. Can we pull you in on this one, Claire?
Absolutely, thank you, Chair. If I could just pick up on the first point as well, working closely with Melanie, I can absolutely confirm she never ever gives up. So I do think, you know, well done, Melanie. You are absolutely tenacious in ensuring our children have every possible chance that they can. So thank you. In relation to the localities, we work really closely with our colleagues in housing, our colleagues in planning and our colleagues across the police service to ensure that when we're identifying a potential home, it is a home that's right for the young people in relation to the locality for where schools are, for any safety issues, community, where young people tell us they want to live as well, because that's really important. Our young people are very vocal and they tell us where they want to be, and they tell us where they want their homes, and they tell us what they want their homes to look like. So we listen to our young people as well. So in a huge amount of work goes into ensuring that we have the right home for our young people and it's a safe home. And we also spend a lot of time looking at the community resources that sit around that home as well. So our young people can benefit from a whole range of different things and opportunities that exist in their community. So they become an active community member as well. So there's a huge amount of work goes into that, and it takes an extraordinary length of time. So it's not a quick decision that's made. So I hope that helps provide some clarity.
It does, Claire. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Claire. Now, what I have is let's see, Councillor Bainbridge, and then Councillor Smith, and then I will sort of cut the debate off there because we are running out of time. So, Councillor Bainbridge.
Thank you, Chair. Helen, I would just like to, sorry, Councillor Bainbridge, Tresley Street East. Helen, I would just like to ask you, have you been able to go into the COVID pots for money for the children to get them through this epidemic time, and for initiatives and programmes?
Yeah, so we've there's been a number of things that we've been able to access from central government. So one example of that is that there's been some additional monies for the Adoption Support Fund. We've been able to provide some additional support to our kinship carers and our special guardianship order carers. We've extended things like helplines and peer support opportunities. We've worked with some different services to be able to offer those kinds of supports, as well as to adoptive parents who might need some additional support throughout lockdown. So there's been a number of kind of key funding streams like that we've absolutely been able to access for the benefit of both children and the carers.
And will that continue? Will that be able to continue over the next 6 months?
Some of them have been temporary, some of them have been extended. So the Adoption Support Fund monies have been extended. So yes, I mean, I think they're just under review depending on what's happening in terms of the COVID pandemic, really. So we just need to keep abreast of that. And I think one of the challenges is, as is often the case, is how we think about what that looks like in terms of the longer term and how we sustain some of those things into the longer term. So that's a continual conversation that we'll have, really.
Okay, thank you, Helen. And may I apologise, Chair, for being late in. Michael Turnbull had to invite us in.
Oh, well, that's accepted. Can I now call in Councillor Heather Smith, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Heather Smith. I'm the member for Evenwood and the Vice Chair of the Corporate Parenting Panel. I just wanted to make a comment with regard to where new children's homes might be sited. There is a section about this in the new County Durham plan, which was adopted following the full council meeting on Wednesday. So if members are if there are applications for new children's homes in a members division, I would encourage everyone to read that section, because it gives clear guidance that would help with planning decisions about where the appropriate place would be for a new children's home, and the size that it would be appropriate for it to be. I know that our own council will follow these guidelines, but as we know, there are many private providers and there is a large number of private children's homes in the county, and sometimes the recommendations that are in the county Durham plan are not always followed. So I would encourage members to become familiar with those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. That was very helpful. Thanks very much. Okay, so what I want to do is move to note this presentation or this strategy that's been delivered. Are we all in agreement with that? Do we? Thanks very much. It certainly did generate an awful lot of interest and a lot of questions. So thanks very much for that. So can we now move quickly on to the next item on the agenda? That is item 9, which is a performance update. And can I invite the Corporate Qualities and Strategy Manager to present the report? Would you like to present this? I believe it's Stephen, is that correct?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, my name's Stephen Tracy. I'm the Corporate Qualities and Strategy Manager. We've got a few slides to talk through today. I think these are slides 63 to 66 in your pack, the final 4 pages of your pack today, but I will try and put the slides on screen as well. If you could let me know if you could see that.
Yes, I can see that now.
Yes,
right.
Thank you.
Yes, so over the last 6 months, while there hasn't been a regular update of committees, of all committees across the council, I think there's been a series of briefing notes that have been sent around to give you an update on activity over this period. As this is the first meeting back, we've brought a brief performance update which gives you an overview of some of the key issues and of what's been happening to our looked after children over those months. And I'll take you through a few of those slides and answer whatever questions I can afterwards. So overall, as Helen indicated earlier on, the number of children as of today is 951. At the time we read these slides was 951. Sorry, but the issues with the change in the number of looked after children over the last 6 months or so has seen an increase of around about 50. And I think, as Helen mentioned earlier, what we've seen is this trend related to these 2 charts at the bottom of this slide here, where we've seen a 25% reduction in the number of children becoming looked after, but a 50% reduction in those children ending their spells in care. So we've seen more children potentially remain in care for longer than they otherwise would, which means the number of looked after children overall have increased. When we look across to our regional partners in terms of what's happened elsewhere, we can see that increase over the last 6 months is pretty much around average for the region. There's been other local authorities that have had a higher increase, but some with lower as well, and a couple with actual reductions in numbers. Now, moving on to some health assessments, we can see that over the our latest update is that about 90% of our looked after children cohort have had a health assessment in the last 12 months. And for those under 5, it's that they've had a health assessment in the last 6 months, which is a deterioration in terms of what we've seen in the last few years, but partly this is about being able to get hospital appointments, which is, you know, they're a part of the impact of COVID overall. And the same can be seen with dental checks as well, but to a much starker degree. So there's around about half of looked after children have had a dental check in the last 12 months at our latest snapshot. But again, this is partially due to people being able to access dental appointments regularly over the last pandemic period. Over this period, we've had 20 missing episodes relating to 11 different children, and where we've offered 20 return to home interviews, of which 18 were accepted, and all of those were completed promptly after they were accepted. So generally, overall, I think the number of missing incidents over this period is lower than what we would normally have. But it again continues to be something that we closely monitor as a service. Now, some outcomes for care leavers have improved over this period. So when we look at accommodation overall, we see that our latest snapshot is up to 93% of our 17 to 18-year-old care leavers living in suitable accommodation, and that increases to 95% for our 19 to 21-year-olds, and that's actually much higher than what we've seen previously. So only very small numbers now and not in suitable accommodation. Actually, the numbers on the chart here haven't pulled through correctly when we've done those charts. So those numbers for the individual age groups are 94%, 96% and 94%. So they're all kind of reasonably high. When we look at education, employment and training for our care leavers, we can see around 2/3 of 16 to 17-year-olds are in some form of education, employment or training at the point of the report, which is round about the same as what we've seen over the last couple of years, showing a small increase. And it's a similar picture, albeit at a slightly lower level, for our 19 to 21-year-olds. So again, just over half, 56% at our latest snapshot, but slightly increasing on 6 months ago and the previous year. So I think, as I said, Chair, that this is a reduced performance update this time, not a full performance report that you'd usually get, and we'll look at bringing those back in future meetings on a regular schedule.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Are there any questions? I'm looking at the list here, and Councillor Joplin, I believe that you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the question I want to ask is, your stats on suitable accommodation are absolutely brilliant. Can you just answer one question for me? Do we have any of our young children that end up sleeping rough? Because you do see a lot of young people, you know, sleeping rough in cities, and I just wonder whether we have that problem and how do we deal with it?
Do you want me to?
Stephen, are you the best person to answer that, or?
I was going to suggest that Helen might be the best place to answer that.
Okay, Helen, could you answer that, please?
Thank
Yes,
you.
I can answer that. We absolutely don't have any of our young people who are sleeping rough. One of the indicators that we do report on when you get the more detailed performance information is around our use of bed and breakfast accommodation, and again, that's something that we absolutely work hard to make sure that we only use in absolutely exceptional circumstances. So we know where all of our young people are. As you can see there, the numbers in suitable accommodation, the very small numbers of children and young people that are described as not in suitable accommodation might include things like young people who are in custody. So even where you haven't got 100%, if you like, that probably reflects 1 or 2 young people who might be in custody at any point in time. So I can absolutely provide you with that assurance that we haven't got any of our young people who are homeless.
Yeah, because the figures are absolutely brilliant, and it's quite comforting, I'm sure, for all of us on the corporate parenting panel to see these figures. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I pull in Councillor Wilson, please?
Yes, I noticed some unaccompanied young people coming into the country. How are they treated and where do they stay?
So those are young people who, if we have unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, then they become part of our looked after children cohort, if you like, and that's why we've included them on that slide there. So as soon as we become the responsible local authority for those young people, then we care for them and they receive all of the same services that all of our other looked after children would access and receive, and they would access the same offers of accommodation and support in exactly the same way as any Durham child would.
Thanks very much. Any more questions before we move on? Can I ask, can we note this update, please?
Yes, Chair.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Yep. And can we move on now to item 10, which is any other business? And could I pull Claire in here, please? That she just wants to make us aware of something positive.
Thank you, Chair. So again, Claire Morris, Strategic Manager, Children Looked After Resources. And I would like to share a good news story from one of our young people in one of our homes. And during the whole of lockdown, our young person has had an ambition to be a footballer, as many of our young people do. And throughout the whole of lockdown, he has spent hours and hours in the garden practicing his football skills, exhausting the residential staff who have inadvertently become quite experts themselves in keepy-ups in different football techniques. And I'm really pleased to say that at the end of lockdown, he went through some competition and trials and was selected for a local football team. And a couple of weeks ago, he had his first match, and I got a photo of him all kitted in his football outfit, really excited to go onto the pitch. And his team won 7 goals against the other team. And he also won man of the match. So I got a fantastic photo sent through where he was holding up his man of the match certificate. He was covered in head to toe in mud, and he had the hugest smile on his face, and it was one of the best achievements and the best moments in his life was his feedback. So I just wanted to share that achievement with you all, because it makes it just hit home how important the work that we all do is. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire, for sharing that with us. That is excellent. And I note that Councillor Constantine has asked to speak.
Sorry.
You're on mute.
Sorry, struggling with the technology. I also realised I haven't mentioned where I was from in any part of the meeting, so it's Lanchester's division beneath recorded. It was just quickly, I should have emailed you before to ask, sorry, but I wondered if we could put our record of thanks to Florence Coulter from, she was team manager in foster and adoption service, and she retired during lockdown. She regularly reported to panel on behalf of the fostering service, and she was mainstream fostering panel advisor, so she's been a real help to me in that role. But if we could just send thanks from the panel, that would be great. And that was lovely, Claire. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes, thanks for that, Jude. And yes, I hope that we can recognise that on your request. Thanks very much for that. Okay. Okay, let's see where we're on item 11 now. Yes, item 11 now, which is exclusion of the public. It's at this point where I ask a mover to exclude all members of the public and media to enable us to discuss items containing exempt information. Can we have a mover, please?
Yes, Chair, I move that.
And can we have the seconder, please?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Tucker, I second that.
That's great. Thanks very much for that. Can I say, before the end of the public part of the meeting, can I thank those members of the public and media who may have been watching today's proceedings. Can the panel remain in the meeting, please? There will be a brief pause whilst we move to part B of the meeting.